This is Mike Caldwell from the Greater Des Moines Partnership. Welcome to the Drake Athletics Challenges and Pivots session. Hosted by Michael Admire, Director of Broadcasting for Drake University. Joining Michael is Brian Hardin, Director of Athletics, Todd Stepsis, Football Head Coach, and Jennie Bar, Women's Basketball Head Coach. We now join Michael for the session.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, a lot of people missing sports right now because, 60 plus participants, that's fantastic. So a happy May Day to everybody. Happy 43rd birthday to Todd Stepsis. Man, what a good looking man for 43. So happy birthday, bud.
I like to tell people that I am on my 4th year of celebrating my 39th birthday. So we can just kind of switch that up. It'd be great.
Okay, so yeah, happy 39th birthday again.
There you go.
And thanks to your wife, Angie, for helping set this up, Tiffany and Jay, and everybody at the Des Moines Partnership for what they're doing. They put on some awesome webinars. I've got a chance to watch a couple over the past few weeks, and it's really cool to be a part of. If you're interested, you can check out their events page. If you're interested in watching some of the other ones, they've gotten some great Des Moines connected people. Once again, make sure you have the mute on as some folks are joining in here right now. And yeah, we plan on hitting a wide range of topics today because, yes, it's a Drake webinar or Drake Athletics webinar, but there's so much going on in the world of college sports that we want to touch on a lot of stuff here today. So thank you all for tuning in. We also want to make this a very open conversation. So I'll be checking the chat on the side as we go through. So if you have any questions, make sure to drop the questions in there, and we'll make sure Todd, Jennie, or Brian get a chance to open those if we get to those. Reminder once again, make sure that if you're in here to be on mute. And yeah. So obviously we've all kind of had to adjust in some fashion in the past 2 months. And I think it's fair to say if you're tuning in today at noon on a Friday, you're missing sports. We're all missing sports right now. And we have 3 guests, although on the same team, these 3 have faced their own unique challenges right now. So we have, a season canceled without notice that impacted the women's basketball team at Drake with Jennie Bar. And then there's also a season in flux and trying to coordinate 110 plus student athletes from all around the country with the head football coach at Drake, Todd Stepsis. And then there's also the aspect of trying to navigate financial hardships and then a direction of an athletic department that was rolling through March, and then it just all kind of stopped. So we have the director of athletics, Brian Hardin. So I think at first I would just like to kind of open it up to all 3 of these participants and just kind of give us an insight into your quarantine life. And we'll start with Brian. Man, what has it been like over the last 2 months for you? What are some challenges you face, and how are you kind of navigating this new life that we're living?
Yeah, Michael, thanks for the questions, and Angie and Tiffany and Jay for this platform here. It's great to see everybody who is on this call, see a lot of familiar faces we haven't seen in a while, and we're all definitely missing sports. I think one of the last major sporting events, or one of the last great sporting memories I had, was certainly, I see Frank Orsini on here, and it reminds me of Frank, who lives in the Chicago area, and he is a good Drake alum, and he was down in St. Louis, and you would recognize if you watched when we played UNI and beat them by 20 to advance to the semifinals of the conference tournament. Frank was one of the 2 guys who got a ton of camera time, who was wearing an old light blue jersey. Yeah. He was down there sitting, by our bench and was high-fiving. That was a great time, and that's where we want to try to get back to. It's the last, I guess it's 7 weeks today is when I was on a conference call with the other athletic directors in the Missouri Valley Conference, and we had to make the right decision, but still the tough decision to cancel our spring sports season. And this came 24 hours after conversations around what was going to happen with our women's basketball tournament. And it's crazy to think where we've gone in these last 50 51 days or so. And I mean, the conversation with Jennie that we had in the NAP Center at, 10 minutes to 10 before they leave to get on the team bus to go to Moline. And we're discussing, okay, the tournament's going to happen. And we're discussing, the reduction in tickets we're going to face because there's a 12:30 call that afternoon. And then all of a sudden how everything shifted. And we saw major college basketball tournament after major college basketball tournament being canceled. And the tone of that 12:30 call shifted, and as did, the following 7 weeks. So it's been a lot of working from home. I've only been in the office at Drake only once in the last month, and I'll be actually going down there tomorrow to get a couple of contracts signed and scanned and sent off. So it's a lot of time at home. It's a chance to freshen up my homeschooling skills. We've got a 9-year-old that's in 3rd grade and twins that are in kindergarten, and I can just tell you that I do not have a future as an elementary school teacher. I would say between my wife and I, we neither one of us is going to win Parent of the Year. We are really struggling. I think those with other young kids, I'm sure Todd and Jennie can attest to this. We've swapped stories, so I know they can. It's just, you do some of these assignments, and like what they're teaching, how they're teaching kids math is different now, and having to work with my oldest on similes and metaphors, and then even like our kindergartners said the other day in the interviews, we had to say, okay, the 6-year-olds, you've got 2 minutes and you've got to write as many words that start with CH. Okay, great. Now the next one, what about PH? Okay, now the next one, is SH. And with the last one, you just kind of hold your breath because you're afraid they're going to say something they might have heard their mom or I say. And seriously, the very first word that Elliot said, okay, SH, he goes, oh, shut up. And we're like, well, it could be worse, I suppose. And he's correct. So we allowed it to count. But that's kind of been our life at home. The professional side of being able to have these kind of conversations have been nice. It certainly lets us know, just kind of how important it is to stay connected. During times of social distancing, you need to really be able to communicate well with everyone. And I sent a note out, a month or so back about just kind of to our staff and to folks, just letting them know kind of what we need to what we should focus on as a department. And we've got 350 plus student athletes from 25 states and 21 countries. So we have some real challenges trying to get people back home, trying to figure out logistically, how can folks leave the country? Once they leave, are they going to be able to come back in at some point? Who needs to stay here? Who are some folks that maybe it's better off for them to be in Des Moines and be on campus or at an off-campus home as opposed to going home? How do we adjust for those kids who do go home, but they live in a home that have a lot of siblings and they may not have their own space? So how are they going to learn and take tests? There are some very real situations that we had to kind of go through. And fortunately, we had so many great staff here and our coaches. We've got 2 outstanding coaches that have built great cultures within their programs that have those outstanding relationships. I see a few of our football student athletes on the call here today that can speak to that better than I can. But we wanted to make it really clear that there are going to be 5 areas that we really wanted our staff and our coaches to excel in during this time period. And first one was to set a routine, to get into a daily habit of something you can do, so you force yourself to get up and know what that day is going to look like. The second piece is to over communicate, that you just cannot communicate enough during these times, and it doesn't matter who it's with. And then in the course of those communications, the third piece is to establish expectations. Be really clear with someone that you're talking to, what still needs to be delivered. There's still things that have to get, we have work that needs to get done. Let's make sure that we're really clear with those expectations. I think that the fourth part is to, during a time like this, let's reevaluate kind of everything we've done, but then let's not be afraid to reinvent ourselves. And the way that our coaches have done a great job of utilizing these video conferencing, this platform, to communicate with their student athletes in productive and in fun ways has been really great to hear some of those stories. And then the fifth part, the last one was to be human and to understand that all of us are going through something that we've never really experienced before, and to appreciate that we're all going to go about it in different ways. How I live this is going to be different than maybe how you do, but that doesn't make one better than the other. We just need to try to be understanding, be empathetic, and be appreciative of whatever everyone's going through, and just be human in all type of interactions we have. So that's just kind of a glimpse of how things have been on the personal side and on the professional side.
That's perfect. Thanks, Brian. Todd, if you want to kind of take the floor here.
Yeah, sure. I make sure I mute my camera like everybody else because there are some wild stallions in the basement. The door is unlocked though, so just in case that pops open, it's just them. But yeah, I've actually, this time for me, I'm a glasses half full kind of guy. As a lot of you that know me already know, I've really enjoyed some parts of it. No doubt about it. It really has opened my eyes to how much I enjoy being around my girls. Angie included, obviously, in that group as well. But I mean, you start to really appreciate some things that maybe you wouldn't get to appreciate if things were the way they were. I mean, so I think about waking up and getting kisses from my girls whenever I want. It's pretty awesome. And the tea parties that we have during lunch, it seems like every lunch just has to have we have to have a tea party. So I've liked that, and the bike rides and digging in mud looking for worms and roly polies and things like that. So there's been a lot that I've really enjoyed in this time. The homeschooling, kind of like Brian, it's had its ups and downs. There's been a little bit of blood, some tears from time to time. I joke with the staff. I was like, I guess we'll see when school starts up if I've done a good job or not. How behind is Addie going to be compared to the rest of the class that she's in? But yeah, it's been a challenge, but we're doing the best we can here at home, and I really enjoy being around my family a lot, and it's definitely when things do go back to normal, it's I'm going to appreciate that stuff a little more. It's a funny story. I don't know if Jennie and Brian can attest to this, or others that have young kids. When we get a chance to get outside and be active and run around and go on these bike rides, things tend to be a little more calm. But then when we're cooped up inside, there's not a whole lot of physical activity. The girls are kind of at each other. So, it reminds me of that show back in the day, The Dog Whisperer. I don't know if anybody ever used to watch The Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, but he always said you should raise your kids like dogs. They come home and you make them run a lap around the house before you ask how their day is and give them a hug. So the physical activity has helped the environment around here. But all joking aside, we still have a job to do, and that's something that my staff and I have talked about a lot. We promised our athletes that we were going to develop them, we're going to challenge them physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and here at Drake, when everything is how it always used to be, we know how to do that. We know how to program workouts, we know how to practice, we know how to push them to their limits, make it really tough. So we already knew how to do that. Well, now all of a sudden we had to kind of rethink, well, how do we fulfill that promise, and how do we make this still a great experience for our players, one that they're going to benefit, from, long down the road. And, so, we can't get out in the community and give and serve. So how can we help people while we're here? So, it's been challenging, but I think it would be much more difficult if it wasn't for the tremendous people that we have at our university. Everybody from the top down, it's when everybody's pulling the rope in the same direction, it makes things, it makes them manageable, and it gives you hope and that you can accomplish something great. And, everybody from the president and all his staff, the vice presidents, Brian and all of his staff, we have a brilliant coaching staff, within our organization. And, you think about football, it's probably 140 plus people. You're thinking about the support staff, athletic trainers, strength staff, Dalton with all the academic help that he does. I saw Dave Applegate on here and all the things that he does for our team. Think about all those people, but they're all pulling in the same direction, and they're all doing a fantastic job of thinking outside the box and being creative with how we're going to manage this new situation. How can we hold up our end of the deal for our players and our program? So, and then I don't want to forget about the team. You think about the team, they're really what makes this thing all go. And so, they all have this tremendous passion for football in particular. They love the game, but then they have passion in their lives. You know, they're the type of people that, you know, they're going to put their heart on their sleeves, and they're just going to go for it. And they're just going to put it all out there, and whatever it is we tell them to do, they do it to the best of their ability. They have this fight that we talk about. And, you know, having those guys in this situation, those type of guys that are wired that way, which really we get that at Drake. Those are the types of people that we attract. Now all of a sudden we feel like we can have an advantage. You know, we talk about our competitors. We don't think a whole lot of our competitors have what we have when it comes to the type of person that's on our team and the type of staff that we have, all pulling in the same direction. So, you know, they deserve a lot of credit because they're the ones that are getting creative physically. You know, Rhino does a great job as far as programming, strength and conditioning. Okay, you have a lot of equipment. Here's what we need to do. Oh, you have some equipment. You have a weight vest. You have some dumbbells. Here's what you need to do. You have nothing. Well, here's what you have to do. And, you know, and seeing our guys with across the board with what they have, it's been really awesome. I mean, we've had guys that they'll go to Home Depot and spend $10 and buy an 80-pound bag of concrete mix and wrap it up with duct tape. And then all of a sudden he's showing the team, you know, on these types of things, here's some of the stuff that I can do with this new weight that I developed. So, you know, they're doing a great job physically. I think to play football, yeah, you're going to get embarrassed if you're not ready physically. So there is some of that motivation that's kind of already in there with our sport. But, you know, now as a staff, okay, you know, they're challenging themselves physically. They're doing a nice job as far as staying ready physically. But then how do we now challenge them mentally and emotionally and psychologically? How do we build their minds and their hearts? Like, how do we do that? That's how you have a really mentally tough individually. And we really actually tapped in to our alumni base. So, you know, we've had our own women webinars. So, you know, Brendan Daly, who he's a 4-time Super Bowl champ. He actually is an assistant with the Chiefs. You see Michael giving us a little chop there. You know, he jumped on our team, you know, on one of these with our team, and man, it's amazing some of the stuff he's learned along the way from Bill Belichick, from Tom Brady. You know, how to practice, how to conduct yourself, how to be a professional. You know, we had you know, Eric Saubert, who, you know, was drafted in 2016. You know, how he now attacks the game and what kind of challenges he's faced, not being able to access the facility up with the Bears. And okay, well, you know, how can we do some of this stuff? And it's been great. And I've had a former player of mine, Jeff Heath, who's going into year 8 with, you know, he's with the Las Vegas Raiders now. I mean, he's talking to our DBs as far as, and this is what I did to get to that point. And, you know, and then we've gone kind of the non-athletic route. So, you know, just recently we had an alum from 2013, Kevin Marshall, who is now a Navy SEAL. And so it's like, okay, you're one tough dude. You know, how did you develop that toughness? How did you get through that BUD/S training? I mean, you know, what was that like? And how, you know, what kind of lessons did you learn that we can take? And then we had Stan Slowinski, who he's a retired Army vet, but man, if you look at his bio, I mean, he's an all-star. I mean, he's a hero. And now he's the vice president of one of the greatest, or one of the biggest, you know, liquor distribution places in Tennessee. And he's talking about leadership and, you know, how our guys can be better leaders and better followers. And, you know, Brad Foltz, who's a lieutenant colonel out in San Diego, commands 650 Marines. And, okay, well, what's that like? How can we tap into your knowledge too, which is just so cool. And then we also had a fun former coach, Joe Hadicek. So anybody that played Drake from the mid 80s to the mid 90s got a chance to be around Joe. And man, and talk about a passionate guy, and then some of the relationships that he's built, you know, with while he was here that he still keeps in touch with today has just been awesome. So I feel like I'm rambling, and I apologize for rambling, and hopefully I didn't lose you. My wife's shaking her head, but yeah, it's been phenomenal as far as just seeing our team, our organization really adapt and thrive in this city.
No, Todd, I appreciate that, despite what Angie was saying or actioning over there. Jennie, yeah, just kind of same thing for you. Just what has your quarantine life been like the past couple months?
Yeah, you know, I think family, like everyone has alluded to, it's had some really amazing moments, and then it's had some major challenges, right? So, you know, my husband's a small business owner, so we've also seen that side of things as well, from just the, you know, just overall impact of everything. And so that's been an interesting process. But our, we try to structure every day to about homeschool and things like that. So I have our first grader and kindergartner, and they've done a lot of running, but that's the only thing I know. You just do what you know, right? When they don't get something right, you just take a lap. So that's been part of our process. And then my husband has had our almost 3-year-old. And so, we're constantly worried that the two of them will get divorced or they've become each other a little bit too much. But I can promise you my husband's been in more costumes than I think he cares to admit or appreciate. But now you all know, so that's good. But I do think that there's some really good things, and there's just, you kind of forget, honestly, how much your children are part of you in the really not fantastic ways mostly. And so now you have no one else to blame. We could blame daycare before, we could blame, oh, they're learning that at school. And now you're like, crap, or like, Brian, shut up, So that part's been an interesting dynamic for sure. From a team perspective, we had a really interesting, and we're still trying to navigate through that because there's still so much uncertainty, So obviously with the end of our season, literally finding out on the bus, heading to the tournament. And then when we got back, we found out, heading to the conference tournament. And then, we got back, we arrived, we were planning on going to dinner. And in that hour of time, the NCAA tournament canceled. So those were some really, there's no playbook for that. And there's no, there's just no process for it. And so we were able to, as a group, kind of grieve it together for that day. And then all of a sudden we all go into, quarantine, and you go into isolation, and everybody heads back home and they leave all their stuff here. And so that's been really hard, trying to navigate through that through a Zoom call. And, you sit there and you think about too, this is how our youth is learning right now on these Zoom calls. And this is how our, some of our loved ones that are sick, and in seclusion or in quarantine in different places, this is how people are saying goodbye to each other. So it's a humbling, it's really powerful to think about that. So I think those are some of the things that we've been able to talk about, but through that transition, we've had to not only try to spend the time and then kind of heal together in Zoom calls, because that's all you can do. We've also tried to do a lot of small group conversation, so you can kind of process through some of that. So we had our grieving time, as much as you can say that. I know it sounds weird, but it's also, there's a lot of hard things to take out of this. When our senior class could have been the first class at Drake to have gone to 4 NCAA tournaments in a row. And, Sarah Ryan ends her career with 999 rebounds. And I know we can go back. And that was the first thing Brian said, is go back and look and find that 1,000th rebound. Because, and there's just so many stories like that. And, I hope you all got to see Scott Van Pelt on ESPN did a really nice feature just on our 3 women. And if you haven't, I'm sure you can go back and look either through our social media channels, or you can kind of Google that. But and then there's the process of, okay, how do you just take the senior class and how do you help them advance? And so they've had to, do Zoom calls. They all want to play professionally. So again, that's a unique situation as well, because they have to sign with an agent. And so you go through a screening process of your agents over the phone, over a Zoom call, FaceTime, that kind of medium. And then they select one. So they've all signed with agents, and now you wait and see. So you have no idea. There's opportunities, Becca and Sarah have both had a lot of opportunities already come up, but there's no certainty anywhere. So there's strength in some foreign markets, typical strength and tradition. There's some that aren't, but you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if they'll have a season. You don't know if they can even get there. So I've had former players that have been stuck there. So I had one former player of mine that played for us at Colorado who was in Italy during all of this. And so she was literally stuck in Italy. So she couldn't even leave, where we had Maddie Dean, who played in Cyprus, who, got her stuff, was out 2 days later before everything hit. And so she was at home and in quarantine. and all that. So it's just, that's been an interesting process because most professional women's basketball players go overseas and play. And so that's been interesting. And then then you have to start already with the next year, because that's usually what happens during this time, is you start to really work on your individual skills. And so we've had a lot of individual calls with our players. And then we've kind of transitioned to having Zoom calls with our returners. And again, trying to keep them motivated. Those first couple of weeks, we're all motivated. So you get, the first 2 weeks, you're like, okay, this is great. We've never gotten to just sit back and do all these things. And so you're motivated. And then you hit that third week and you're like, okay, not so fun anymore. And then you hit the fourth week and you're like, okay, yep. And then, that fourth week was when we found out there was no more school. We knew Drake was in online school. Us as adults have, all of a sudden we're like, okay, so our homeschool schedule is a little bit longer, and you've got all these other things going on. And then now you're just kind of like, okay, and now they're prepping for finals. So that's been a really interesting process as well to navigate with them through that. And then you have this other, group of your incoming freshmen who have no idea what's going on. They're trying to graduate from high school. So they have high school classes, and then a lot of them take college credits as well. And so they're trying to kind of navigate through that. And then, we'll implement them in those Zoom calls at some point and kind of go from there. So this is also what we do for recruiting. So we're on Zoom calls all the time for recruiting purposes. Typically one of our biggest recruiting periods is the spring. So we have a couple tournaments that we go and we watch people through the spring. So we won't have that. So it's twofold. It's one, your decisions really have to be made off of film, which whenever you watch film, you can find a lot of faults. And, so you have to really just try to really get to know people and get through a Zoom call, because they can't come on campus. They can't see you. There's a lot of panic right now in terms of commitments. And so people just panic and then they commit because they don't know what else to do, because there might not be our summer recruiting either. And so it's a really unique time right now. And there's over 520 women's basketball transfers. So you're navigating that as well. We've been really fortunate, I think, from a culture perspective, that we haven't had that, which is really nice. Brian can probably allude to the men's basketball number, because I'm sure that's a lot higher, and I'm sure from football it is too. But when you're thinking over 520, when we can't even see each other, that's pretty outstanding. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. So Michael, you can kind of lead the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, Jennie, I think there are at last I looked, there were like 730 men's basketball players in the transfer portal. Obviously, that number's probably gone down since that point. But so we're going to kind of move into the Q&A section, and I already see some folks using the chat function on the side for those questions. So please continue to use the chat function. Andy, thanks for posting the senior night feature on the Facebook page there. Jennie, I did kind of want to start with you, and you touched on it a little bit there with the culture. I mean, as devastating of an end to the season as it was, I really believe your team's well prepared for the future, whatever it may be, because you already have that culture established. How have you seen that take place over the past few weeks?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me get to that too, because Paul, I see your comment too, and it was really hard to be able to, I really felt like we were primed too. I felt like our team was in a position to be able to, I think we were hungry. We had a great week of practice. We had, we'd established ourselves a little bit for getting close in the NCAA tournament. So you feel like we would have been able to get a little bit of a higher seed, hopefully. And if not, we still would have been able to be a great team in the tournament. So I don't know how to get through that. I still don't even know how to get over last year's call at the end of a game. You know what I mean? And it's, you try to process through that, and that's where you just try to have good conversation, but it is unfortunate. And it's, a lot of people think it's about the 1 year in the team, but I mean, you think about these guys, and that's what they've dreamed about, having the NCAA moment their whole life, and they've worked for it their whole life. And so it is devastating, and we're still trying to work through that. So I still keep in frequent contact with our seniors, but it is about the seniors, but it also really hits the rest of your team, because they know what that means, and they know how special that class was too. So I don't really know the answer to that, but we'll keep trying. From a culture perspective, I think the first thing that we've really talked about is at this time of year, we're really doing two things. Typically this time of year, we work on our individual skill sets, and we really work on just the whole group in terms of the chemistry piece and really getting to know each other on a different level. So we're still able to do a couple of those things. What we're doing in terms of trying to get to know each other more is similar to like what Todd was talking about. Either there's an article that someone sends, or there's, we send a TED Talk video and we talk about it, or we'll do something fun, like, okay, we're on a Zoom call and I surprise them and say, okay, you have 30 seconds, get up, go pick up 3 things. If you're on deserted on an island and you have to bring 3 things, and ironically, they all bring their cell phone and charger. And I'm like, where are you going to plug that in? But, whatever, we all have to learn. So, kind of navigating through some of that stuff. And then playing games or having fun or having, we've just had to be more strategic on having those phone calls and getting to really know each other a little bit more. And then the second piece is, a lot of them are shooting in their driveways, or they're shooting at a neighbor's house. And, because they were going to local parks, and then a lot of them have rims shut down. And then you're kind of navigating too when you have different state policies. So, a lot of them have talked about going up to Ames, because that just opened up a little bit. So there's, facilities up there that they can now maybe go into. And those are the local players. But, our players from Wisconsin are like, well, we're, shut down for the rest of the month of May. And so maybe we'll just come back to Iowa. I mean, not really, but like they're, just trying to navigate through a lot of that. But really the biggest thing right now for them to do is just to fall in love with the game, get a ball in your hands, get outside. And that's as much of our culture as anything else. So when they know each other are doing it, then it's really fun. But that's how they started to fall in love with the game was a ball in a driveway, probably. I mean, that's my kids right now, they're in the driveway and they're pretending to be other people. And, I think that's the coolest thing to be able to see that. And so that's what our players need to be doing too. So that's our culture. It's not super complicated. They talk to each other a lot. They care about each other. They want to know what each other are doing. And then they'll also have a little bit of competition. They'll put, just to keep themselves accountable and motivated to work out. They can track steps. I mean, you can do all these different things through, an Apple Watch and all that stuff. We can't do any of that, but they can, and they've had a lot of fun. And then if the summer changes, we'll have to do things a little bit different. But I think for me, it's been fun. I've really talked to our rising seniors a lot. We've had a lot of conversation about how they can lead and what they need to be implementing with our younger players. And so it's teaching, and it's also continuing to just develop the culture.
Thanks, Jennie. And yeah, the women's basketball team kind of experienced the front end of all these cancellations for football, kind of experiencing maybe the other side of it, to where you have no idea what's next, and everyone is planning and hoping for the season to start on time. But Todd, how do you balance getting ready for game Labor Day weekend in September, but also preparing for a shortened season or any other million scenarios?
You try to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, I guess. So that's really what we're doing right now, as far as, okay, is there going to be a season? Is it going to be shortened? When's it going to start? When are we going to report? But the one thing that has been pretty constant as far as a message from our coaches to our players, and our players with each other, and then even some of the guys that I've gotten a chance to hear from have said this too, is you can't look too far ahead, because then you'll start to lose your edge and your hope that you might have had that day. And so, our guys are really trying to do, the best they can as far as making sure their mindset is that of, hey, let's be great where our feet are. let's really focus on what are the challenges of the day? How do we get through that? And then, good, bad, or ugly, let's see what the next thing is. So, I like military books, and I like reading about, different leaders and whatnot. And, there was a Navy SEAL book that talked about getting through Hell Week, and, the guys that made it versus the guys that didn't. And the guys that made it just broke down the time into just moments. Like, how am I going to get to breakfast? Okay, once I'm here, now how do I get through this? And that's how we really have to think. So, we can't be longing for, oh man, when's this going to end? And we really just got to focus on the day and being great today. So, I know there's a couple players on this thing, and they might even be able to give you some insight as far as what they've had, what they've been doing, some of their challenges. I know Gavin Dineen might be on this thing, and he actually, I think, was an intern there with the partnership, for a short amount of time. Gav, I don't know if you can hear me or if you're dialed in right now. I am long-winded at times, but do you have any thoughts or what you guys are going through?
Yeah, I mean, I know Jennie just mentioned how the first few weeks you're feeling pretty energized and like ready to go. I gotta say, at least me and my roommates were kind of like, man, no spring ball was our last spring ball. Really getting to soak up like this. Like some of your greatest memories come from like I remember Michael Roan was singing karaoke with his last spring ball practice, so it was pretty funny. But once we kind of stopped feeling sorry for ourselves, we're like, everyone's going through this. Literally everyone in the entire country is going through this. You kind of take a step back, and like you said, we've getting so many opportunities. Like I play defensive line, and for me to talk to Brendan Daly, who's won, 4 Super Bowl rings, like that's pretty cool. Not a lot of people get to do that. So what we've been trying to do is obviously talk to each other. We're all going through the same things. People are upset, but kind of realize how unique this opportunity is. So every morning I get the chance, wake up early, stay in that routine, and it's nothing but football till about 10 a.m. So that's pretty cool. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had class. And then after that, I have a few hours, for class. And then in the afternoon, I'm talking to, Carl Lawson, a defensive end for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm a pretty positive guy too. So I'm looking for this stuff that this would not be happening. I'd be sitting in class, kind of dozing off. But now I kind of get to, I get to spend more time on football, spend more time on school, and kind of have that separation. So obviously I want to be, in spring practice and get ready, but definitely some unique opportunities and trying to make the most of it. So
good stuff. Yeah. If you're really a football nut, spring ball is like the best. I don't know how many, true football fans are out there, but if you ever get a chance to attend a spring practice, either at our place or wherever you may be, I highly recommend it because, Gavin kind of hit on it. I mean, there's no pressure to prepare for a game. So guys, really, you really see who they are, and we have a lot of fun. There's a ton of competition. As a coach, you don't worry about it getting too physical. So there might be an altercation here or there, but we're all working hard and developing and competing. So not having that was definitely a big challenge for our players. But again, they're all sharp, they're all bright, and they're all motivated. So like Gavin said, they've really quick snapped out of it, and they'll be ready to go whenever we get the green light.
I always love hearing Drake's student athletes speak, and like that's what I do for a living. But then every time they speak, they make me look bad. Gavin, that's awesome. Thank you for how articulate and well put that was. There's a great question in the chat, Todd. Just about how long do you think it would take, weeks, days, months, to get a team prepared once they get on campus to then play a football game? And I heard an interview earlier this week, and they were bringing up Russell Wilson's experience when he transferred from NC State to Wisconsin. He was only on campus for 12 days learning the system. I know it's a totally different scenario when it comes to Russell Wilson, and I'm sure he was getting some workouts in prior, but where have you guys thought through that as well? I'm sure you have.
Oh yeah. And really at the end of the day, games are never won on Saturday. They're always won, in January and February. So, a lot of times it's me being the optimist that I am. Our guys are doing a great job. And so from a physical standpoint, they're going to be ready to go whenever that may be. So if that's August 1st, we're going to hit the ground running, and they're going to be right there. Mentally, like I said, our assistant coaches really deserve a ton of credit, because they're holding these weekly meetings, these small group meetings where, yeah, it's some schematic stuff and some strategy stuff, but it's also connectivity type of piece to where, we're keeping those bonds that we have strong, to the point where, man, I better do what I'm supposed to do, because I don't want to let that guy down. And so, yeah, training camp's important. I think there is such a thing as hitting shape. There's the cardiovascular shape and the strength training shape, but then you got to get used to delivering a shot and being able to take one at the same time. So, if you're to say, okay, you got to give me a date. How long are you going to need before your first game? Training camp's big, so that's usually a month before our first game. I think we can be ready to go and not miss a beat.
Thanks, Todd. Brian, a lot of the topics, or a lot of the conversation here has been about motivation. Just how do you stay motivated? Week 1, 2, 3, okay, but now we're flirting with 6 weeks, and maybe even a few more after this. I know, especially early on, I mean, you would have to make a decision on something, and then 12 or 2 hours later, it was obsolete. How are you staying motivated when some of these decisions kind of get pulled out from underneath you, and then you got to kind of go right back at it?
Yeah, I think that the idea of motivation, I mean, you're either going to be self-wired to be motivated, or you're not. And so, I think you look at, I think we've got some great staff members on the call here today. We have some great student athletes here, and that's a big source of motivation, is making sure that you can try to do whatever you can to put them in position to be successful, whether they are part of a coaching staff, whether they're part of our athletics department staff, whether it's student athlete. I think it's just some of it too. It's just the pride you take in the job you have, and understand, okay, I'm the athletic director at Drake right now. There have been plenty that have come before me. There's been plenty that come after me. So in this brief period of time in the landscape of Drake's history that I have this role, I need to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to leave this place better than I found it. Hopefully that's not for a really long time, but it's like you look at it and say, I've got a picture on my desk at the Bell Center back there of me and Paul Morrison, and Paul gave himself to Drake for several decades. And that's there. I had a chance to have 2 conversations with him before he passed. And he passed from the time that I was hired and introduced, and before I actually started was when he passed. And so, but that's there just to kind of remind me of the duty I have in my position, and that there's a certain level of expectation that our student athletes and our coaches have for Drake. There's a certain level of expectation that our alumni and that our fans, that our community members here in Central Iowa have for Drake athletics. And as someone who has this position right now, I've got to do all I can to make sure that I'm allowing our coaches to be able to give them the tools they need to be successful, to put our student athletes in the best chance to succeed in the classroom and in the community, as well as in competition, and make sure that our employees, the folks that are excited to come to work every day, even if that work is at home right now, that we're still making sure that they're excited to understand the impact that they get to make on a daily basis if they choose to do so. So that's what kind of serves as my motivation. That's the gas in my engine every day.
We've heard about how student athletes are being impacted, and just how both the coaches are kind of navigating those scenarios, ever-changing scenarios, really. But Brian, I did want to touch on maybe the nitty-gritty of an athletic department, a little bit behind-the-scenes type stuff, because we're seeing schools throughout the entire country make really tough decisions. Kansas State recently cut salaries of some of their head coaches and ADs. Some coaches, I think Boise State is furloughing a few of their coaches. And I know you're well connected within the athletic director world. What are some topics that come up when discussing the financial aspect of an athletics department?
Yeah, I mean, the financial piece of that takes on so many of our conversations. We now, I'll say one positive byproduct from this, just personally, has been I'm on a weekly call with our other athletic directors in the Missouri Valley Conference. I'm actually jumping on here at 2:00 every Friday we get together, and then we'll sprinkle in a couple other conversations, and we'll have a Zoom call here. And the amount of transparency and how vulnerable some of our, almost all of our athletic directors have been in the last 4 weeks compared to my previous 2 years here has just been fantastic. We're all kind of in the same boat, and that we have to make some really tough decisions. And yeah, I'd say where we're at Drake is I feel really good about kind of where we're at financially for this fiscal year. I had someone private message me here during the call. I've got more concerns about the next year. I think we're at a stable spot. We've got great leadership on our campus. What President Martin has done and decisions that he helped us make over the past year have put us in a position to be in the spot. We've got some board of trustees members on, and they are privy to some of the real details of kind of where we're at. So we're going to finish this fiscal year. We were in great shape on March 1st as an institution, probably the best shape we've been in a long time. And it's going to be, it's not going to be as great as it was 2 months ago today, but we'll still be, we'll be fine. It's the next year and that uncertainty that looms ahead is more concerning. We've lived through an unprecedented time. We still are right now. It's the uncertain part of, getting students back on campus and what does that look like? How many can do that? How soon can it happen? Will this flare back up in the fall? Will it happen later in the fall, in the early winter? What type of impact will it be? How soon will a vaccine be ready? Those are things and there will be a trickle-down effect that will impact student athletes and college athletics. I think there will be a distinction made between what pro sports can do and what college sports can do. So a lot of those discussions, those are some of the things that we're discussing with our athletic directors. The call here I'll have today, I imagine we'll spend the bulk of the time talking about access to facilities this summer. It looks like the NCAA might punt on the decision of establishing guidelines that everybody's going to follow. That's something that's going to change in the last few days. And they might allow schools and conferences to establish their own set of rules. Well, that's intriguing on a lot of different levels, and it also can be problematic. As I talked with Todd earlier today on a call. So we'll have to talk through all that and kind of see where we fit. But everything that we do will have the interest of safety and healthy decisions in the mind of our student athletes and our staff that are around them all the time, and our community members that would be around them too.
Well, and Michael, can I interject for 1 second on that too? So I think, from a coaching perspective, it's really nice because our administration does handle all of that, so Todd and I can focus on the culture of the team and our staff and what's happening. And so not that we don't all have tough decisions to make or what the decisions we'll have to continue to make in the future, but it's really nice to be able to have that support. And I know a lot of places don't have that, and that's something that makes Drake unique and special. I also feel like that's part of being part of Des Moines. I think Des Moines has done a nice job too of being able to communicate a lot of that. So from that standpoint, that's very unique to Drake. But it's really nice to be able for Todd and I both to focus on what we need to focus on right now. And that's just give our players as much security as possible when there's so much uncertainty. And so it's nice from that standpoint.
Yeah, Todd, did you want to touch on that as well?
Sorry, slow on the mute button there. But yeah, I mentioned it earlier. It's the Woody Hayes quote, "You win with people." Man, I mean, we have such great leadership here, and we've got so many people that we can look up to. I mean, other coaches of other programs included. I mean, to be able to focus on our teams and to learn from one another, because all that other stuff's being handled, and we feel confident, people handling it's really great, and there's a little uncertainty and nervousness as far as the staff's concerned. And kind of a funny story, one of our staff, he likes to bake, when some of these topics start to come up as far as budgets and what's the future going to look like. So I've got some cookies and ice cream and whatnot coming at me here soon, which is great. But yeah, being at this place really does make you grateful, especially in a time like this, that we have so many people working together to accomplish a goal, which is awesome.
Those aren't like bribe bakery items at all, Todd?
I don't know, maybe. We'll see.
We have a few minutes left here, so if you have any questions, throw them in the chat here real quick. I did want to kind of go back through the line once again and just kind of ask each one of you, how do you think you will be different once this quarantine is done? What have you learned during this about yourself personally that you think will have a lasting impact on you in the coming months and years and the rest of your life? And Todd, since you're highlighted on my box, we'll start with you.
And I mentioned a little bit of it earlier. You appreciate the things that you don't necessarily appreciate. So Gavin kind of hit on it too. You're looking at things that you now get to do that normally you wouldn't get to do. So I get a chance to be around my family this whole time. So when it does go back to the way it was, really making sure that I capitalize on the time that I'm at home, not be tethered to my phone and answering recruiting calls or whatever, but being there in the moment. But then on the flip side, this has really made me appreciate our players. Nothing against my family, Angie and the girls, they know I love them very much, but at the end of the day, it's kind of nice to talk to some people and see some people. And, it feels like almost I took for granted how much I enjoyed being around our players. They're great and all, but that was the norm for me. And then all of a sudden for it to get taken away, man, I look forward to seeing them on these Zoom calls. And I think that the other coaching, the rest of the coaching staff will also say the same thing as, when we do all get back together, if it's socially distancing acceptable, there's probably gonna be a lot of hugs going around. So, understanding that, man, this team, this group, it is a special group, but I think it's really gotten heightened now with the current situation. So, there's always been a lot of love on our team, but it might be taken up a notch moving forward.
Brian, wanted to pass that question on to you as well.
Yeah, I guess I would say a couple words that come out to me are perspective and appreciation. I've got my 9-year-old sitting next to me now, and so that wouldn't have happened. He should be in school right now, and so the ability to kind of spend more time with him and Kara and Noah's brothers has been fantastic. The sense of appreciation for what, when we're taking away from something of what we have, and it's relationships and the ability to be around people. And it's something that the ability now we're forced to be more empathetic and understanding, and we find ways to connect on a different level than maybe we had before. And then I'd say the last part would be resiliency, that this is a tough time that we're going through, but we as a society, we as Central Iowa, we as Drake Athletics employees, we're tougher. We are tougher, and this is a tough time, but we will be tougher than this. We will find ways to come out of this better on the back end of this. We will learn many lessons along the way. We'll find many ways for us to improve. We'll be consistent to the values that we've always had before. But we're gonna come out of this tougher, and we're gonna come out of this more focused on things that truly are important and more appreciative of those items that maybe we lost for a little bit. But when we regain them, I think we'll respect it and appreciate it that much more.
Thanks, Brian. And Jennie, I know you're huge on the mental side of things, often finding different books like Todd to read to better yourself. I'm sure you've given this a little bit of thought, or I guess have you given this question a little bit of thought?
Well, I think both what Todd and Brian both said is 100%. I mean, I think we're all taking away those, just understanding time a little bit more. And, I was just going to answer the question just a little bit differently from more of like a business perspective in terms of, and then I'll hit the book thing too, but just from a technology standpoint, I think it benefits us to, especially at the level that we're at right now. And so, you know, I did see the question about this, the whole idea of the transfer portal and what we can do. And there's really nothing that we can do. And so the only thing that we can control is really the culture that we help establish and create. But that's something that we have to continue to do a better job. And so part of what we've learned as a staff is that technology is powerful. And so as many knocks on technology as we can get, we also have to learn it. And so we have to, so having Zoom calls with recruits is something that we've learned, that we've utilized a lot more now, that we'll continue to use and continue to utilize. I think, you know, we also have learned that when we have our whole staff on a Zoom call with a family, it's a little bit more difficult than when we have two of us on a call with a recruit and their family. So those are things that we're taking out of this that we'll continue to implement, are just the use of technology that maybe we didn't either know as much about or have had to really learn about. And then the other thing I think that's been really interesting from our perspective is, you know, we're going into our 9th year, so it's a little bit different. You kind of get to that space where it's like our players know the offense. You kind of, you know, you teach a couple new people. Now we're at this completely different place because we've graduated so much and now have to completely challenge the way that we've done things. And so we have to get out of our box and grow and change and evolve and understand that there's a different way to do things. And I think even if it does go back to normal in the summer, you know, is there ever a new normal? It's the new normals now, and then the new normal's coming, right? And so I think those are things where we're challenging the way that we've done things. And I don't know if we would have challenged it as much. I think we always try to evolve and grow, but I don't think we would have challenged ourselves as much if this wouldn't have happened. So I do think, like you said, the book thing, the book I'm reading right now is on Generation Z. And so it's really trying to understand this generation a little bit more, because it's really starting to evolve. And so you want to be able to relate a little bit more and understand. And so those are kind of the books that I'm reading right now, to be able to understand our generation more, to be able to put them in small groups, to be able to talk more, and kind of for us to continue to grow and for us to continue to learn too.
I love that.
Not powerful, but that's all I got.
No, it's interesting. Kind of a insight into just how everybody's thinking right now. I really appreciate it. So we have reached the hour here. So did want to give a thanks to Todd, Brian, and Jennie for their time and insight to everything that's happening within the world of athletics and Drake Athletics. I recorded a podcast with Blake Bolden yesterday that we'll post here a little bit later today, but we allowed ourselves some time at the end to think about what it would be like in maybe fall watching the Drake relays, or just how sports will look when it comes back and some of those special moments. Yes, when it comes to college athletics, student comes before athlete for a reason, but also some of those athletic moments that we'll have hopefully in the fall, winter, and next spring are going to be so magical. I mean, honestly, it's going to be so cool. And thanks for everybody that joined today. We were around 70 plus the whole time, so that's awesome. A big shout out to Angie, Tiffany, and Jay for making all this happen, and the Des Moines Partnership. Make sure you check out the event page as more and more of these webinars continue on. So with that, enjoy your Friday. Have a great weekend. It's going to be good weather. Hopefully see everybody soon in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Angie.
Thanks.